They say hell doesn't exist on Earth, but they've never walked through these gates. This is not just a prison. It's a world within a world, where time stops, where humanity is stripped bare, and where survival depends on how much darkness you can carry inside you. Behind these walls, men vanish, not because they die, but because the outside world simply forgets them. Every scream, every fight, every whispered confession is a reminder that in this place, freedom isn't a dream. It's a weapon. Welcome to the world's toughest prison. Before we begin, if you love true crime, untold prison stories, and raw human survival tales, make sure you hit like, subscribe, and turn on notifications. Because this isn't just another story about bars and cells. It's a journey into the psychology of confinement, where one mistake can cost your life. Today, we go behind the walls of Cresty Prison, Carandiru, and ADX Florence, places so brutal. Even guards fear their own shadows. But only one of them earned the title, the world's toughest prison. And what happens inside will change the way you see justice forever. The fortress of no return. Deep in the heart of Siberia, there's a facility that defies reason. Black Dolphin Prison. Built in 1745, it stands as Russia's oldest and most feared maximum security prison. Here, over 700 of the country's most violent killers live in permanent lockdown. Murderers, cannibals, serial rapists, all stripped of identity, known only by number and crime. Inmates are forbidden to sit or lie down during daylight hours. They stand for 16 hours straight. When they move, they're bent double, hands cupped behind their backs, guided by guards who keep their heads down like livestock. They call it walking the dolphin, a twisted ritual of humiliation designed to remind them that they no longer belong to themselves. Guards here sleep with one eye open. Every corridor smells of bleach, metal, and fear. No inmate has escaped. None ever will. But even in this frozen fortress, rumors spread of secret punishment rooms, of prisoners who disappear after midnight inspections, and of guards who've been buried in unmarked graves, their deaths written off as accidents, in a place built to contain evil. Sometimes, evil becomes the walls themselves. The ghost prison of Brazil. Sao Paulo, Brazil, a city known for its endless skyline and its endless crimes. But beneath the towers of concrete and neon lights, there once stood a structure that became the symbol of Brazil's broken justice system, a place that held more than 8,000 prisoners, in a space built for barely 3,000. This was Carandiru Penitentiary, a living nightmare of sweat, blood, and chaos. For decades, Carandiru was ruled not by the government, but by its own inmates. Guards rarely stepped inside the blocks. Gangs controlled food, medicine, and life itself. And the strongest of them all? The Commando Vermelho, the Red Command. By the early 1990s, conditions inside had become unbearable. Diseases spread faster than the guards could react. Fights broke out every hour. And in 1992, Carandiru would earn its place in history. For all the wrong reasons. October 2nd, 1992, a dispute between two prisoners inside cell block 9 erupted into a full-scale riot. Knives, razors, sharpened spoons. Anything became a weapon. When the guards lost control, they called for the military police. Hundreds of officers stormed the prison, armed to the teeth. They had one order: to end it in just 30 minutes. The riot turned into a massacre. 111 inmates were killed, most of them unarmed. Many were shot as they surrendered. Some were executed in their cells, their bodies stacked in corners like garbage. The government called it necessary force. But survivors called it something else: a cleansing, a message. Even after the prison was shut down, locals swore they could hear screams echoing from the ruins. They called Carandiru the ghost prison. And to this day, its name carries the weight of every life lost inside. In Carandiru, violence was routine. But what happened next would redefine what the world considered tough. Because thousands of miles away, in the heart of the American desert, a new kind of prison was being built, not just to contain violence, but to erase humanity itself. the box in the desert. Florence, Colorado. The locals call it Little Siberia. The inmates call it hell on earth. This is ADX Florence, the United States' most secure federal prison. It was built after a series of violent attacks inside other prisons. A place designed to make escape not just impossible, but unimaginable. Every prisoner here lives in a 7 by 12-foot concrete box. No windows, no physical contact, no voices except your own. They eat alone, exercise alone, sleep alone. Even the air they breathe passes through layers of reinforced steel vents, so no sound can travel between cells. To most, it's known as the Alcatraz of the Rockies, but to the men who live here, it's simply called the box. Inside, you'll find names that once terrified nations: terrorists, cartel leaders, serial killers. Each one reduced to a number and a schedule. They spend 23 hours a day in solitary confinement. That 1 hour of freedom, it's inside a cage, barely bigger than the cell itself. Even light here feels like punishment. It never goes off completely. So inmates lose sense of time, their minds slowly unraveling in the endless hum of artificial silence. One former warden called it a clean version of hell. They built ADX Florence to contain the worst of humanity. But what they discovered instead was what happens when you trap the human mind long enough for it to start eating itself. And as we peel back the layers of this concrete tomb, one question lingers. How far can a prison go before it becomes something darker than punishment? Voices in the dark. The psychology of solitary. Imagine a room the size of your bathroom. A concrete bed, a metal toilet, and a slit of light you can't reach. You live there alone. Days blur into weeks. Weeks into years. For most inmates, solitary confinement lasts a few days, a punishment for violence or disobedience. But here inside ADX Florence, some men have been in isolation for more than 2 decades. They call it Morse code therapy. It's the only form of communication they have, tapping through the walls, just to remind themselves they're not already dead. Psychologists describe solitary as a slow-motion brain injury. Deprivation rewires the mind. Hallucinations, paranoia, violent outbursts. They're not side effects. They're the design. One inmate wrote, "The silence screams so loud it feels like it's inside my skull." Another claimed he began hearing his mother's voice, though she'd been dead for years. And here, reality bends. Time stretches. Every thought echoes back until you can't tell what's real anymore. The human mind isn't built for this kind of stillness. Inside the box, even hope becomes dangerous, because to hope means to remember what freedom feels like. Some inmates begin talking to insects. Others memorize every crack in the wall, every scratch of their handcuffs against metal, until it becomes their only proof of existence. They can take your body, but when they take your sense of time, they take your soul. And yet, despite the torment, the system calls it control, a necessary evil to keep order. But in truth, solitary confinement doesn't just break prisoners. It breaks everyone, the guards, the doctors, the very foundation of justice. The guard's burden. Behind every locked door, there's another story the public rarely hears. The story of those who hold the keys. The officers of ADX Florence are trained to be emotionless. No eye contact, no small talk, just control, routine, precision, but in a place built entirely on fear. Even those who enforce are not immune to its reach. You learn not to feel. You can't afford to, but the silence follows you home. Guards describe the isolation as contagious. They spend more time with concrete walls than with other human beings. Many end up drinking, some in therapy. A few, like the inmates they watch, simply lose touch with reality. One officer, after 14 years of service, took his own life. In his final note, he wrote, "I started to feel like one of them. When you work in the world's toughest prison, there's no such thing as outside. The walls follow you, in your dreams, your family, your thoughts. This is the paradox of ADX Florence, a place meant to contain monsters that slowly turns everyone who enters into something less human. when the walls start talking, in a place where silence reigns. Even the smallest sound becomes a threat. Inside ADX Florence, guards report hearing things. Footsteps when no one's there, voices calling their names down empty corridors, doors locking themselves. Officially, the prison dismisses these reports as paranoia, a side effect of long shifts, artificial light, and constant stress. But off the record, some officers talk about the hum, a low, mechanical vibration that never stops. It seeps into the skull, a sound so constant that after a while, you stop hearing it until it disappears. And then, somehow, the silence becomes deafening. One inmate, a former hitman known as Vega, claimed that at night he could hear tapping, not Morse code from the next cell, but from inside the walls. He told psychologists that the prison was alive, that it breathed with him, that every time someone died inside, the hum got louder. Vega's story would be easy to dismiss, until others started saying the same thing. Officers on night rounds began hearing it too, the same low hum that seemed to pulse in rhythm with the prison security system. When one of them cut power to test a generator, the hum didn't stop. It got louder. ADX was designed for control. But what happens when the place designed to hold monsters starts creating its own? Experts say this is all psychological, that extreme isolation causes the mind to invent patterns, to fill the void. But inside the toughest prison in the world, the line between hallucination and haunting is razor thin. Records show dozens of guards requested transfers after night shifts in Cell Block D, the wing where inmates with severe psychosis were kept. They described shadows that moved against the light, doors that locked themselves, and an unshakable feeling that someone was always standing just behind them, whether it's the echo of madness or something else. No one truly knows, but every sound, every shadow, adds another scar to this place. The ones who never left. In every prison there are ghosts, some made of guilt, some of memory, and some of those who never made out alive. Since its opening in 1994, ADX Florence has witnessed dozens of inmate deaths, suicide, heart attacks, unknown causes. But among these files are cases that don't add up, like Thomas Silverstein, a man who spent 36 years in solitary confinement. He once murdered a guard inside another prison, and the Bureau of Prisons locked him away permanently. Silverstein lived in silence longer than most people live in freedom. He wrote that he began seeing shapes in the corners, faces that weren't there. He died in 2019. But some guards still swear his cell feels colder than any other in the facility. Or Richard Lee McNair, a man who once escaped a North Dakota prison by mailing himself out in a box. After his recapture, he was sent here, to the box that no one could ever leave. He once told a reporter through the bars, "You stop being human in here. You become sound. You become smell. You become memory." And maybe that's the truest definition of this place. The inmates vanish, but their presence lingers in the air, the steel, and in the dreams of the men who watch over them. Some say that's guilt. Others say it's something deeper, because in the world's toughest prison, no one ever truly leaves. The system that created the beast. Every fortress has an architect. Every system has a motive. What we call justice is often just architecture, built from fear, policy, and profit. ADX didn't appear out of nowhere. It was born in the 1980s, the era of super predators and war on crime. Politicians promised safety. Private contractors promised efficiency. And the public demanded vengeance. In truth, America wasn't building prisons for justice. It was building an industry. By the time ADX opened its gates in 1994, the U.S. had the highest incarceration rate in the world. 1 in every 100 adults behind bars. And soon, other nations followed. From Russia's Arctic gulags to Brazil's vertical favelas of concrete, the Supermax model became the global blueprint. Isolation became policy. Control became profit. And the line between discipline and cruelty began to disappear. The logic was simple. If fear could keep prisoners in line, then fear could also keep citizens obedient. When you dehumanize one group, you condition society to accept it until eventually everyone becomes expendable. Behind the walls, men broke. Outside the walls, voters applauded. It was a perfect cycle, one that fed itself with every news story, every headline, every politician who promised to be tough. But toughness comes at a cost, and as prisons grew stronger, so did the silence surrounding them. Each door sealed another truth, another life, another piece of humanity, and somewhere in the process, the system stopped being about protecting society and started being about maintaining control. Prisons became factories of fear, and like any industry, it needed to keep running. Because if there's no crime, there's no profit. The world's toughest prison isn't just a place. It's an idea born from fear, fed by politics, and kept alive by silence. The human cost. When the gates finally open, freedom doesn't feel like salvation. It feels like vertigo. After years in confinement, the world becomes too loud. Colors are too bright. Every open space feels like a threat. Psychologists call it post-incarceration syndrome, a trauma so deep it rewires the brain. After 10 years alone, I couldn't sleep with the lights off. I still dream of concrete walls. Many of these men reoffend, not out of defiance, but out of familiarity, because the cell is the only place that still makes sense. The system calls them statistics, but they're the human fallout of decades of cruelty, the proof that when punishment becomes permanent, it stops being justice. From the ashes of Carandiru, the silence of Black Dolphin, and the endless hum of ADX, the lesson is the same. When a society builds walls as high, eventually it traps itself inside. The echo chamber. Today, there are more than 10 million people incarcerated worldwide, each locked door, a reflection of decision made in fear. Technology has made the walls higher, the cells smarter, the control tighter. But no machine can erase the truth. A prison can only ever be as humane as the people who run it. In this new age of automation, the human element, compassion, mercy, understanding, is fading. We tell ourselves that prisons keep us safe, but maybe they're just mirrors, reflections of what we fear most, our own capacity for cruelty. Because when you build a world on punishment, you end up living in one. The silence after, listen carefully. That sound isn't the hum of a prison. It's the hum of everything we choose not to hear. When the last door closes, when the shouting fades, when the chains stop clinking, what's left is silence. And in that silence lives a question that every society must eventually face. What is justice without mercy? We built fortresses to hold monsters, but along the way, we forgot that monsters are made, not born. Behind every wall is a story. Behind every story, a choice. And every choice shapes the kind of world we wake up to. Maybe the world's toughest prison isn't made of steel and concrete. Maybe it's the one we carry inside, the one built from fear, anger, and the refusal to forgive. Because when cruelty becomes routine, when punishment replaces understanding, the walls don't just hold them, they hold us. These places, these monuments of despair, are not just about the people we lock away. They're reflections of the choices we make when no one's watching. And maybe one day, when the last cell goes dark and the hum finally stops, we'll realize we were all inmates in the same system. The degree of civilization in a society can be judged by entering its prisons. Fyodor Dostoevsky. Thank you for watching. If you believe these stories need to be told, if you believe truth should never be buried behind bars, then share this video, subscribe, and help the world hear the voices that were never meant to be heard.